And we are recording. Welcome everybody to the Pulse coffee break session. Sorry, just got all sorts of things popping up on my window. Okay, sorry. Welcome to the Pulse coffee break session on day 2 of the Digital Transformation in Government conference. Now we are very fortunate to have Ott Velsberg, who's the Chief Data Officer for the government of Estonia, giving a presentation on building a data-driven government. Ott is a renowned Estonian IT specialist and government official, and he's known for his expertise in data governance and data science. As the current Chief Data Officer of Estonia, he's responsible for driving the country's data policy and initiatives related to the use of data in the public sector. He has a wealth of experience in coordinating data governance and data science with a focus on domains such as artificial intelligence, open data, citizen-centric data governance, data management, digital transformation. And under his leadership, Estonia has gained a reputation as a trendsetter in data governance, open data, and AI. With his passion for technology and data, he's making a significant contribution to Estonia's digital transformation and is shaping the country's future in data governance. So without further ado, welcome very much, Ott, and thank you for taking the time to present to us. Over to you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here virtually. I know it's been long days since yesterday, and today I'm gonna present how we are building a data-driven government in Estonia. What is our strategic focus for the next decade? But also more practically, where have we come from? What have we learned during that journey? And what I see as the next steps for the government itself. So first of all, I'm going to briefly cover our government agenda for 2030. When you look at the leaps, these are the things that we want to achieve. And these are kind of the next jumping points for the government itself. We're talking about switching to live event-based and proactive services. From one end, this includes that citizens don't need to ask for government services, but rather the government approaches citizens themselves. So for instance, if a person is eligible for benefits or allowances or any type of service, the government should proactively approach the person instead of the person asking for the government if they are eligible, for instance, child benefits. Or if you're studying well, then if the government already has that data itself, we should approach and provide those benefits proactively. So the idea is that we should change the way the government operates completely. And this is not just an idea, this is something that we've been working on for over 5 years, and we already have the first live event-based services live as well. The second leap that we really try to achieve is an AI-powered government. And the idea for AI-powered government is that the citizens are able to interact with the government using our virtual assistant, Bürokratt. But at the same time that in all major decisions, we are utilizing AI to benefit both the public sector employees, but also at the same time, really try to think about what are the impacts of different politics, but also decisions that we make on a government level itself. To combat both of the previously mentioned, we are focusing on human-centric digital government. So for instance, it is about empowering citizens to take charge of the data the government has, and also decide when and for what reasons both government entities, but also wider, for instance, private sector or other third-party stakeholders can utilize the data that the government has. We already have implemented consent service, which enables citizens to do that. Since last year, we have over 200,000 consents generated. And what are the impacts? For instance, citizens are able to get loan offers in basically in 3 minutes. You will just authenticate yourself using a mobile phone, put in your PIN ID, PIN 2, and off you go. And in 3 minutes, you will get your offer. What is the benefit of operating like that? The government has all the information about where you have worked, how long you have worked, what is your salary, and so on. You're able to get comparable offers from different financial institutions. As a result, you will have the possibility to decide which financial institution really offers you the best offer. At the same time, it is about transparency, how the government provides an overview of the ways that we actually process personal data itself. You can go to the government portal and you will see the different ways government entities have so far exchanged and processed your data, and the tool itself is data tracker. But in order to make those leaps possible, it is really about building the foundations. One of the most important parts is data-driven governance and reuse of data, where we focus really on data governance, but also on data analytics, competence building, and so on. But everything that we do in Estonia, it's really about innovation and development of the field itself through community. So our strategic approach to developing AI or working on data governance and many other areas is about transparency and collaboration. So we try to make everything open source, but at the same time, all the data open data as well. So this is just some of the parts that we focus on. And as most might be familiar with, the requirements for data-driven society, in our opinion, is fair requirements, making sure that data is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. But are we fair in Estonia? Unfortunately, not in a holistic sense. Agencies still do not have a good overview of their data sets. Not all data descriptions are published regularly. Available descriptions are still oftentimes of poor quality or inconsistent, although we do have our metadata standard, which roughly, when we look at our national open data portal, roughly 90% of all government agencies actually follow when describing their data. Proactive and regular publishing of data is increasingly growing, and this is one of the trends that we see is really happening at the same time. The second thing is that metadata itself is published automatically. So we can ensure if government agencies have or manage data on their local site that the same metadata is findable from our registry, but also from government open data portal. But still, we do have also problems with custom and badly documented data structures and classifiers. I wouldn't say that some of the things that are actually used are classifiers, but this is an area that we really need to focus on. So just some of the examples from a data quality side as well. Data quality and metadata are one of our two focus areas right now when it comes to kind of the enablement side. We do have issues with data quality, and these are just some of the examples that I quickly took out from some of the public data sets. So for instance, when you look at car accidents registry, we happen to have car accidents happening in Iran and off the coast of South Africa. When we look at our president's Medal of Honor registry, then you can see that the oldest person to receive an honor was 1,932 years old. Of course, everyone understands that during the data input, there was something went wrong. And similarly, for the coordinates, it was vice versa, and everything would have been fine. And similarly, when talking about data quality, then in some areas, we do see that the way that we operate, we are unable to solve the questions about validity, accuracy, and timelessness alone. And we need to change the processes and the ways that we approach. So just to bring in an example, when talking about the registry-based census that we carried out in 2021, the total costs were roughly 60 million euros. And from that, improving the data quality in our base registries, it was roughly 8 million euros. However, not all data itself is still accurate. And just to bring you an example, family information or where a person actually is living. In Estonia, everyone can decide where they are actually, where they are registered, but they can live in another place. And it is really driven by the way our local government is operating. Local government benefits is if a person is registered to the municipality, they will get a share of the tax income. But at the same time, municipalities offer quite nice different perks. So people really don't have the incentive to be registered in the correct place where they actually live. And people at the same time also live in different places. I have a house in near Tallinn, but also we have a family house outside. So I might be living in two places at the same time. And then there is the question, which one do I actually register to? So in Tallinn, for instance, if you are a citizen, you will get free public transportation. And jokes aside, who doesn't love free public transportation? So we need to rethink what is the role of a person in ensuring the data quality. And if we move more and more towards proactive government or human-centric data governance, we need to rethink what is the role of the person. And I truly believe that we need to have a registry-based culture whereby everyone understands their role and how it in the end affects public service delivery that they in the end benefit from. So, but e-Estonia is oftentimes talked about that it is good in everything. So what has been the journey when it comes to data governance? Up to the early 2000s, it was really about the digitization. It was about development of systems. Up to the mid-2010, it was really about service delivery. Data existed, but only for the sole purpose of providing those services in the first place. And from the late 2010s, it has been more about understanding that data itself has value and data should be managed as an asset. And just to give you an example, when I joined in 2018, roughly 20% of all government agencies had a person responsible for the whole data ecosystem within their specific agency or field. Today, that number is over 50%. So there has been a really huge jump during those years. And similarly, when I started, there wasn't that many data stewards actually responsible. Today, it is more and more difficult even to find a registered database that doesn't have a data steward actually being responsible. So the field itself has grown a lot. And it oftentimes is really about kind of the ambition of the agency. They are more than willing to get competent people. But what is happening is that, unfortunately, in Estonia, we today roughly lack 13,000 people with competence in data-related areas. So it is oftentimes quite difficult to find skilled people. And I will later talk about how we are approaching that situation. So just a keyword, up and reskilling. So what are we actually doing to support different government agencies? It really has been about awareness, skills, and competencies. We provide support, hands-on support when it comes to data quality, publishing open data, carrying out data analytics projects, AI, and basically every area of the ecosystem. Similarly, we provide different courses, educational programs. Of course, we also work on policy, standardized rules, standards themselves, and so on. But also, we enable different stakeholders to utilize open source tools that, in the end, they can actually use themselves. So these include from AI to data governance, and I'm going to cover in a second. One of the things that I see is kind of a must when we move towards data-driven decision-making and organization itself is awareness and upper management involvement and support. Without that, it is impossible to actually make a change. But oftentimes when talking with management, you get questions about what benefit actually working with data management provides to an organization. What is the cost? What is the profit? What type of people an organization actually requires? Who should be the sponsor for data governance as a whole? And these are really relevant questions. When talking about the roles, every organization must have someone responsible for data governance, but also for analytics similarly. So we call them data governance sponsors. And that person is typically from upper management, is responsible for ensuring adequate resources to work with data itself. Head of data governance ensures creation and administration of principles and rules across the organization, also ensures that the organization as a whole is moving towards the strategic agenda that the organization has set up. Data owners, they know the meaning of the data, they know the business context, they understand who are the different data users, and then you have data stewards. Those are the roles that actually manage the specific data descriptions. They define data quality rules, they understand data lifecycle needs, and so on. And it is supported oftentimes by metadata analytic. And also an important part is data processors. Often field workers who actually enter or process data according to the rules defined in data management. And here is just another view of how we are approaching ourselves as well. So we have both technical and domain level data stewards. But what is the economic value of data governance? Early on, I understood that data governance itself, this isn't really a sexy topic for the upper management. But what is really catching attention is artificial intelligence, data analytics, service delivery, and so on. And what we were able to really highlight early on as well is that when working with data analytics projects, oftentimes the majority of the resources of the project went actually to finding relevant data and actually for the preparation and so on. And this brought the domain itself also really kind of the agenda of the management itself. They started to understand more and more why we are talking about findability, usability, data quality, and so on. Today, oftentimes, the kind of data-driven decision-making process is the following. There's a need for data analysis, specific problem, finding data, and actually providing the visualizations, and hopefully taking appropriate actions as well. And both the people responsible for data, data stewards, data analytics, they are oftentimes involved heavily in that. However, an alternative approach that we really try to move towards is making data findable, preparing the data, and if there's a specific problem or a question on a government office level, on any level, you can actually get answer to your question. So for instance, if going back to the presidential order, then if someone were to ask, how old was the oldest person who received an honor, you are able to answer 1932. So that's the kind of, in essence, the idea. But talking from a general perspective, the EU data economy value is expected to be roughly 336 billion euros in 2025. Already we see that there are huge savings when it comes to utilizing data in manufacturing, in healthcare sector. The savings itself can actually be over 120 billion or over 120 billion. And in Estonia, roughly the data economy share of the whole GDP is roughly 4.5%. So the benefits are huge. But as I briefly already mentioned previously, skills and competencies, when it comes to that, you can never do enough. We started with roughly 20 people in the data expert network. Today, we have grown over 500 participants, and those who are unfamiliar with Estonia, we have a population of 1.3 million people in the central government. We talk roughly about 26,000 people. So the number of people that are in our data expert network is increasingly growing. And we provide regular webinars, best practice exchange, and so on. So for instance, we have bi-monthly AI webinars whereby different government agencies are actually sharing their experience, what has worked out, what hasn't, what they have learned from that. We do host annual events, open data forum, AI meetup, data camp, real-time economy, and so on. But at the same time, we try to push the field itself further as well in terms of how we can actually innovate, whether it is using Gaggle to solve different government problems, find solutions to them, hackathons, competitions, and so on. We have various different public e-courses on data governance, open data, data literacy, AI, but also we do roughly one in-person kind of trainings, roughly for 1,000 people each year. So it's really a combination of providing hands-on support, training them, and we have seen that even if the different agencies have the financials, it is impossible to find oftentimes the people. So we need to and upskill people who are today already employed in the government. And I briefly already mentioned, we are providing hands-on support when it comes to different data governance related areas, also data analytics, AI. Today, roughly half of the all AI projects that have been carried out have been to some degree been in collaboration with us. A separate area that we are right now really strongly pushing to is privacy enhancing technologies, how we can actually process data in a privacy preserving way. We also facilitate both the government itself, the private sector, and academia to work together. For instance, when it comes to different research topics, this year we have roughly 20 students who are working on different government topics during their bachelor degree. So this is really an area that we see a lot of importance, but at the same time, we also support the academia from a general perspective as well. So for instance, when I joined in 2018, one of the first things that I really try to push is that we have our first data science master's degree program, which fortunately today we do have. So we funded the initiation of the master's degree program on data science, and today it is really kind of self-sufficient and there is huge interest. But at the same time, getting PhD students, academia to come back to Estonia and so on. When looking at the larger picture, our office is responsible for the policy, but also implementation, and we have various cross-domain strategy and support agencies. For instance, Statistics Estonia, who we work with specifically on data quality and metadata. We have National Archive, which is archiving, Data Protection Agency, Estonian Language Institute, State Information System Authority, whom we together develop various centralized components. And then we have the implementation, different sectoral data offices or IT competence, and also agency data offices. So this is the way that we really try to push and get to. So what about the common tools? The first kind of major tool itself was Data Information System Registry, which provides an overview of the different information systems, registries, and the data that we actually have. And the second kind of major legacy is Government Open Data Portal. And today we are working on two major initiatives. The first one is a national data portal, which we plan to launch around September 2023. And the idea is to extend Open Data Portal and provide overview of both restricted and public data and how that data can actually be accessed, whether it is using X-Road data exchange services, APIs, data science, sandbox, consent service. So looking from a general perspective, making all the data actually findable, searchable, and usable, depending on the need that you have. So if a person or an organization requires data for research purposes, we can direct them towards data scientist environment. Similarly, if an organization wants to build a service using consent, they are able to do that. And in order to ensure that data is actually described and findable, we developed Rihaka, which is an agency level data catalog. And it is really about kind of starting from the agency level and then making data accessible and findable across the government itself. Next, an important topic that I already briefly mentioned is open data. Just to cover some of the basics, how we approach the area. And open data is increasingly an area that we also utilize when it comes to government data-driven decision-making as well. Open data is, for us, everything that is not restricted. Previously, we really differentiated between open data and public information. And people were oftentimes extremely confused. They told, no, this is not open data. This is public information. This is open data. This is not public information. It made no sense. So open data is everything that is accessible. Open data does not, as a result, need to be in a machine readable format. However, if the data is in machine readable format, then it needs to be accessible and findable through our open data portal itself. And also personal data can be open data. Here are just some of the statistics of the field itself. In 2021, the market value for open data was roughly 334 million euros. It might be surprising to many, but when going back 4 or 5 years, we were actually second to last when it came to open data. Today, we are one of the trendsetters in Europe. And the number of data sets that are available has increased over 30 times. And during the time I've been in the government, the number of data sets has been increased by over 40 times. So there has been a really huge push towards making data accessible and findable to different stakeholders. And here is just some of the KPIs that we strive for. As you can see, the published data sets is one of the key areas that we actually work on. A problematic area is municipalities who, unfortunately, today still oftentimes lack relevant competence. And if anyone wants to find out more, avandet.eesti.ee is the address for the portal. And just finally, some of the more important changes that during the last couple of years we've been doing. We set up metadata standards. It is mandatory to describe open data. We have requirements on real-time data, which must be made available via an API. When publishing data, you need to take in consideration user needs. So if a user wants more granularity or data is collected in a certain time frame and user expectations are dissimilar, then you need to make data available in their preferred way. You need to show licensing. You cannot do exclusive agreements and so on. Another important area is really about high-value data sets. we already have 6 categories. And when it comes to high value data sets, the data must be free of charge, using specific core vocabularies in a specific standard and so on. And we are right now working on additional categories. For instance, language data, which is crucial for us when thinking about supporting Estonian language and making sure that in decades' time, people are still able to speak Estonian and they use it as their everyday language. And unfortunately, due to the size of Estonia, not many companies are really invested in developing Estonian language technology, but when we make data available, they are more eager or perhaps willing to do those investments. But also at the same time, we do invest in NLP ourselves as well. And just to bring you some of the examples, another area that we work on right now when it comes to privacy-enhancing technologies is synthetic data. So making data available that is generated from real data, which has similar statistical properties. And here you can just see an example of transportation and vehicle data sets. And I previously mentioned as well, for instance, Gaggle, to find really solutions that the government agencies themselves can utilize, for instance, how to predict water quality. And from Digirigi Academia, you can find different online courses that we use. And just to kind of tie that discussion all together, I do believe that data reuse must be a new norm. And as I mentioned previously, data management should be brought strategically to the management level. We need to improve still access to data. And it is really important to really understand the customer and collaborate. So oftentimes we don't understand what the customer actually requires. And I've always been a proponent that we don't just need to publish things, we need to publish things that actually are being used. And in every data analytics, you need to ask the right questions. But with this, I move to another area, which is our AI strategy and how we actually approach the topic AI itself. So when looking back to 2018, we carried out study on what is the potential of AI, what are the different fields that the government should invest, should the government actually involve ourselves, and based on that report, we created our government first AI strategy, which had 4 pillars. Today, we are more and more, talking about 5 pillars. So we have data as an enabler as a second pillar. But right now we are working on our third national AI strategy. And most likely it's going to have different kind of focus on collaboration and reusability. But talking about those kind of previous years, we understood that the public sector should have a leading role, because in Estonia, the private sector digitalization is still not on the same level as in the public sector. So the government can be a role model and private sector can actually reuse, and we can do knowledge transfer itself as well. And in many ways, as I will talk later on, it has paid off. But in Estonia, we actually don't talk about AI. We increasingly use Kratt as a synonym. So Kratt, as you can see on the screen as well, is a creature built from hay and stitches. And from Estonian old mythology, typically you had to give a few drops of blood, and Kratt actually carried out different tasks for you. But as Kratt was from devil, you always had to be a little bit cautious, because Kratt could actually turn against you. So we use that same parallel to talk about AI. So people resemble and understand that there are huge potentials in automating different tasks, making things more efficient and effective, but at the same time, we need to be cautious about the risk that it might have. So what is the current situation? Today, we have roughly 120 different AI projects implemented within the government, and our objective for this year is 130. Similarly, we already have different reusable AI components, which are over 40, which different government agencies and also private sector can easily reuse. And one of our objectives is that top 10 public services are with AI component. And right now we have over 40 different organizations that have used AI, and we plan to increase that to over 60. But just some of the examples as well. We've been utilizing AI in identifying residential buildings that are fire hazardous, understanding the impact on employment and wages, on training. We are working right now on a solution to optimize teaching and provide personalized education. During the COVID, customer call analysis, also text analytics was an area that saw a lot of interest and a lot of uptake as well. But also different solutions when it comes to remote sensing, identifying clear cutting, understanding what are the different crops, whether the crops are actually harvested, so government officials don't need to do on-site inspections. A major area that we do right now work on is Bürokratt, which is in a nutshell our government virtual AI assistant. And the idea is to provide citizens a way to interact with the government in a channel and device agnostic way. So you can use any device, any means of communication, and the government itself operates as one channel through one channel. But at the same time, behind Bürokratt, we are actually talking about interoperable network of different AI solutions. So it is not just one kind of chatbot model, and it is not just textual or contextual. It's really about providing those specific services that a person really requires. And the solution itself, as most of the things that we do, is open source and free to everyone. And I have mentioned the citizen-centric data governance briefly previously, but it is really about ensuring that everyone knows that you can, from one hand, trust the government, but at the same time, empowering citizens to take control and charge. However, this is not possible to do without actually raising kind of the knowledge and skills of the population as a whole. So data literacy is of most importance. And unfortunately, we don't have yet, but I truly see that we need to start educating people early on from primary school, but we also need to have different helplines for elderly and people who today don't have those necessary skills. And we have created various solutions that both public sector and the private sector can utilize. And just to tie those different central rules and guidelines together, we are, similarly to open source, developing them in a community-based manner. We have different standards, quality frameworks, and much more. And where we right now, what is one of the most important policy side perspectives that we work on is creating standardized models for data offices for the whole public sector, together with the governance, operations, but also competency roles that different ministerial and government agency levels should have. In order to assess the maturity, we have already developed maturity assessment methodology. Each year we carry out regular data audits, and the next objective is to actually publish and manage that through a data health dashboard. So in summary, data is really simple. If you have management involvement and support, clear understanding of the benefits and goals you actually want to achieve, and you have the competent people with the right tools and guidelines. And of course, you need to do continuous monitoring and improvement, as I just briefly said. So this is all from my side. Happy to take questions, and if you have any questions, more than happy to answer.
you ever so much for taking the time to present. I thought that was very insightful. Sorry, let me just trying to. Okay, great. What we have is we have a couple of questions. We don't have much time for many questions. But one of the things is right now is that you're looking in a life event-based model, push-based services. Do you have any problems with, for example, personalized data collection and longitudinal data tracking, if you call it that, but essentially putting all this data together to understand enough about citizens in order to proactively push supports in support of life events? Are you having any data privacy issues and the like?
So we don't have questions regarding data privacy, but what we are right now struggling, and this is really a philosophical question, is about, should we tell everything that we know to people? And I'm just going to highlight so everyone understands. If we know that people are likely to become long-term unemployed, they are very likely to find a job in the near future, should we actually tell that information to a person? Because it might have a really kind of self-fulfilling effect. So if you know that you are long-term unemployed potential, then from the government perspective, it is also a question about resources. If someone is very likely to become long-term unemployed, and I mean never returning to the employment, should we stop supporting? I'm not saying that we should. I'm not saying that we should not provide an overview, because this is an open question. But knowing a lot about what are the potential risks, what are the predictions, it creates new questions that the governments today and in future need to answer. So what is the role of the government? How should we actually handle the information that we have? Should we provide this information via consent? So a person will give a consent that, yes, I want to know what is my employment status. How can I really improve my employability, my likelihood to stay relevant in the field? So these are all important questions. And at the same time, the same questions arise when it comes to healthcare. But in the healthcare side, we do know that even if we say that, according to genome data, so in Estonia, roughly over 200,000 Estonians have actually donated their genome data. So we can provide them personalized services when it comes to healthcare. Even if we say that there is a very high likelihood that you might have a breast cancer or a lung cancer because you have that specific gene, people are oftentimes not actually stopping the smoking. So we need to think new ways how we handle the data, the information that people actually follow through.
Well, that's great. Well, unfortunately, we are sort of coming to the end of the presentation, and I understand that what you're trying to do too is have a huge cybersecurity impact as well. But it's we don't have time to go into that, and you're going to have to audit the data just to make sure that it is accurate, and that you're not having delivering benefits to phony people and the like, because I'm sure fraud is an issue. It's all part of the cybersecurity layer you'd put on top. But anyways, thank you ever so much for presenting today and taking time out of your busy schedule to present. I find it very enlightening. And I want to thank the attendees for, well, being attentive. And hopefully you found this very useful. So anyways, without further ado, thank you very much, Ott. And it was great having you present. And I learned a great deal from it for that. Then the next presentation that's going to be coming up is going to be Emma Connie. She's the Chief Data Officer for the Employment Services and, the ESDC, Employment and Social Development Canada, and it's going to be happening in a few moments. So please take the time. I'm going to be stopping the recording and then closing this meeting. And then afterwards, we're going to be going into the next session with Emma. Okay, see you there. Cheers.